Did you know that resilience isn't just a personality trait, but something you can train your brain to develop? Hey, I'm Beck, and today I want to dive into the fascinating world of neuroscience to uncover the secrets of building resilience. I will explore how our brains respond to stress, adapt to challenges, and ultimately become more resilient. Now, I've fallen in love with neuroscience in recent years, and specifically neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire itself. So, learning about neuroplasticity has helped me to understand that I'm not defined by my anxiety or limiting beliefs, that I can, in fact, train my brain to overcome the old and unhelpful stories and actually replace these with much more helpful narratives. There have been times in my life recently where I have felt so mobilized that I noticed myself overthinking and procrastinating and just crafting a really narrow view of the world around me. In this state, I have felt a whole raft of unhelpful emotions like fear and anxiety, which I worried I would get stuck feeling forever. But by learning more about how our brains respond to stress, how we can adapt these responses, and by putting into practice the tips that I will share with you today, I can proudly say that within weeks, I've been able to shift my mindset to one that is much more grounded, positive, and resilient. My hope is that you can use this information and tips that I'll share in this video to build a more resilient you in your own life. So, to understand resilience, I'd briefly like to explore what happens in our brains when we experience a stressful situation. Now, a stressor could be environmental, such as extreme weather, crime, or even daily hassles and stressful life events like traffic, losing things, arguments with friends or family. Or stresses could be psychological, like worrying about losing a job, dealing with loss, or even self imposed pressures like perfectionism, holding yourself to impossible standards, or setting unrealistic goals. Whatever the stressful event is, our brains have evolved two incredible ways to help us navigate life's inevitable ups and downs. And typically, it responds so fast to our stressors that we aren't even aware of it. So, I'd like to begin with briefly explaining our fight or flight response and our dopamine pathways. So, first up, the fight or flight response. So, there are two brain regions that are crucial in this response. Firstly, we have the amygdala. This is your brain's alarm system. It processes emotions, especially fear and anxiety. And the second is the hypothalamus. So, the hypothalamus communicates with the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system consists of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, and collectively they control our involuntary physiological processes like our heart rate, our blood pressure, our breathing, and our digestion. So, when we face a challenge and perceive danger, the amygdala sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus, which then activates the sympathetic nervous system. Signals are sent through the autonomic nerves to the adrenal glands, which respond by releasing adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream. This is what causes the physiological changes that you experience, such as an increased heart rate and faster breathing. Now, when we experience high stress, our prefrontal cortex takes a back seat. And this is the area of the brain that is typically known for executive functions like planning, decision making, and impulse control. But under pressure, this loss of cognitive abilities can actually make it harder for us to stay calm and make good choices. So, this fight or flight response to short term stress is actually critical for survival reasons. But when we experience prolonged chronic stress, this can actually harm our brains. And the data will show that you're actually more likely to get sick. But here's the good news, your brain isn't fixed. So, through this process of neuroplasticity that I love so much, your brain is actually designed to adapt and change, which is where resilience comes in. But before we get into the neuroplasticity, let me explain the second way that our brain has evolved to help us navigate stress. And this is by our dopamine pathways. So, dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it's crucial for motivation, learning, and of course, resilience. It is a neurotransmitter in our brains, which is essentially a chemical messenger between neurons that contributes to motivation, focus, and happiness. So for the purpose of this video, there are 3 dopamine pathways worth knowing about. The first pathway is the mesolimbic pathway. This is our reward circuit. It helps us stay motivated in the face of challenges. Dysregulation of this pathway is linked to conditions such as addiction and depression. The second pathway is the mesocortical pathway. This connects our prefrontal cortex and is thought to aid cognitive control and emotional regulation. And the third pathway is the nigrostriatal pathway. This pathway is mainly known for voluntary movement and motor control, but it also plays a role in habit formation, which can be key to building resilience. So collectively, these dopamine pathways play a vital role in reward seeking, learning and attention, memory, mood and emotions, sleep, and our stress response, which are essential components of resilience. So when we face challenges and overcome them, our brain's reward circuitry, primarily driven by dopamine, reinforces these positive behaviors. And this reinforcement helps us develop the motivation to tackle further obstacles. By enhancing focus and information retention during learning experiences, we can remember and apply past experiences when facing new challenges, which help us to develop more effective coping strategies over time. When you experience gratitude, joy, or even moments of awe, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin. And these feel-good chemicals don't just improve your mood, they also enhance neuroplasticity, making it easier for your brain to grow and adapt. You can think of positive emotions as fuel for your brain's resilience. Now, I want to provide these explanations of our fight or flight response and our dopamine pathways so that you can understand what is going on under the hood in response to stress before I build upon this message of hope that our brains can grow and adapt because of neuroplasticity. As I mentioned earlier, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself and adapt based on experiences by forming new neural connections. When you face stressful challenges and overcome them, your brain learns to adapt, ultimately strengthening pathways that help you to cope. And over time, the more you confront and overcome difficulties, the stronger these pathways become, making resilience like a mental muscle. This means that every time you practice resilience, by managing your stress, staying optimistic, or embracing discomfort, you're physically changing your brain to make it easier to bounce back in the future. So, what are the practical ways that you can train your brain for resilience? So, number 1 is mindfulness and meditation. I am a keen promoter of meditation and mindfulness, and I have created a separate video with more information on the wide range of benefits that you could see from developing a regular practice. And I'll link to that in the description below. But in this video, I want to cover the benefits specifically relating to resilience. So a regular meditation practice has actually been shown to shrink the amygdala, and the smaller it is, the less likely it is to lead in our emotional fight or flight responses. Other studies show meditators have larger volumes of grey matter in the brain and a larger hippocampus, both of which are associated with better memory, learning abilities, and thinking skills, which are all key factors in resilience building. And if that wasn't enough, studies show that regular mindfulness meditation can actually thicken the prefrontal cortex over time, which is linked to better emotional regulation and attention control. My second tip is cognitive reframing. So this is a really powerful tool where you are essentially changing the meaning that you've given to something. I love this idea, the idea that nothing in life has an inherent meaning. Nothing is either good or bad, and we actually give everything its meaning, which ultimately means you can change the meaning you've given to anything. And when you change the meaning of stress and you actually change your definition of it and you view a challenge rather than a threat, your brain will actually respond differently. So challenges are something you can handle. You've handled many challenges in your life, so the stress response tends to be more short term. So there is evidence to show that viewing obstacles as threats will actually cause us to retreat, to back down, and even give up. But reframing this to see obstacles as a challenge to overcome, we actually shift towards a growth mindset. So by believing in our abilities to improve, you will rise to the occasion. Remember, you have a 100% track record of overcoming every challenge you have faced in life so far. So transforming the meaning from a threat to a challenge can actually reduce cortisol levels. And as your brain is looking for solutions to help you rise to your challenge, your mindset shifts into one characterized by self-efficacy, resulting in clearer thinking and better attention. Tip number 3 is cognitive flexibility training. So think of this like mental gymnastics for your brain. Cognitive flexibility is all about how quickly you can reconfigure your mind, like switching between different tasks, but also to develop coping strategies and redirecting your thoughts. So activities that challenge you to think in new ways, like learning a new language, cooking using a new recipe, playing logical thinking games like chess or Sudoku, solving puzzles, or even trying a new route to work can all enhance this skill. This improved flexibility helps you to adapt more easily to the inevitable curveballs that life will throw our way. And remember, progress isn't just about moving forward. Sometimes you need to pause, take a few steps in a different direction, or even turn around completely. We often think that progress is a straight line with a consistent upward trajectory, but trust that being uncomfortable is part of the process, and trust that your perceived setbacks and failures will be your best teacher and give you direction for continued growth. Cognitive flexibility training will also help you to find new solutions, and it will support you in bouncing back. And this is resilience. Tip number 4 is physical exercise. So exercise isn't just good for your body, it is a workout for your brain. Regular physical exercise actually helps to regulate stress hormones like cortisol and can trigger the release of mood-enhancing neurotransmitters. Exercise has also been linked to increasing something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is a protein in your brain which helps to repair and grow neurons, aiding neuroplasticity and keeping your brain resilient. BDNF is also associated with cognitive improvement, enhanced learning and memory formation, and alleviation of depression and anxiety. And my 5th and final tip is socializing and connection. So resilience isn't something that you have to build alone. When you connect with others, this includes parent-child connections, romantic partnerships, and even friendships, your brain releases a hormone called oxytocin. And research shows that oxytocin is associated with building trust and improving empathy, and affects brain regions involved in anxiety regulation and stress responses, particularly the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, by influencing neuroactivity crucial for emotion processing. Studies will show that having a strong support system can actually create a protective buffer for you from the effects of adversity, which is something I can certainly say is true from my own experience of having a solid network of friends and family around. I tell them all the time that I would be lost without them. So cultivating strong social bonds isn't just good for your emotional well-being, it's actually reshaping your brain to be more resilient. So make time for those coffee dates and family dinners. Your brain will thank you. My final hopeful message comes from the field of epigenetics. So this field studies how our environment and our experiences can influence which genes are turned on or off. Amazingly, positive experiences and these resilience building activities we've discussed can actually change how our genes are expressed in relation to stress responses. This means that even if you weren't born with a naturally resilient predisposition, you can still develop it through your actions and environment. And it's a powerful reminder that resilience can be cultivated at any age. So I'll finish on this, a concept I heard called the resilience scale. So imagine a balance scale in your brain. On one side, you have risk factors that make you more vulnerable to stress, things like past traumas or genetic predispositions. And on the other side, you have protective factors like strong social support, good stress management skills, and a sense of purpose. The goal is to tip this scale in favor of resilience. So every time you practice mindfulness techniques, every time you connect with a friend or overcome a challenge, you're adding weight to the resilience side of your scale. And resilience isn't about avoiding challenges or never experiencing stress or difficulty. That just isn't possible. Instead, it's about adapting to it. It's about having a brain that's well equipped to bounce back from challenges and grow stronger in the process. With the right tools and practices, you can train your brain to become more resilient, no matter where you are starting from. I have actively been putting all of these 5 tips into practice, and I have truly seen shifts in my mindset and perspective within weeks. So I know this is possible for you to achieve too. By understanding and applying these neuroscience principles, you can reshape your brain to become more resilient. It is a journey, but I promise it's one that is well worth taking. Your brain is incredibly adaptable, and with consistent effort, you can build a more resilient you. Remember, every time you overcome a setback, you are rewiring your brain for strength, growth, and success. As always, thank you very much for watching.